You're welcome to episode number 36 of the Voices of Boyle. This week we have Noel Sheerin on to bring us back to life in Boyle during the 1960s and 70s. Those of you from that era will undoubtedly remember Noel and his family from St. Patrick Street. We covered a lot of stuff in this episode, and because Noel has a large volume of memories about Boyle from back in those days, we've decided to have 2 episodes so that we can cover everything. This is part 1, and part 2 will be released in a few months down the road. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode with Noel, as it will give us a glimpse into what life was like back in Boyle when he was growing up in the town. Welcome, Noel, to the Voices of Boyle. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Carlo. Thank you.
So we're up here in Tulsk, Noel, and back you were born and reared in Boyle, and in 1977 you left Boyle to come up to Tulsk and maybe other places. So why don't you take us back to when you were born and give us some memories and stories about Boyle in those days?
I was born in December 1953, so didn't quite make it to 54, but 3rd of December. So, growing up in Boyle, we had I grew up in St. Patrick Street, in Sheerin's. My parents had a drapery shop, which only closed in 2000 last year. My sister Geraldine worked in it for a long number of years, helping my mother before that, and she came to the stage where it was time, I suppose, to take leave of absence from the business and retire and enjoy retirement, which thankfully she's doing that so far. So it was that environment I grew up in, and I have fond memories of growing up in the town, and on that street indeed, many great friends, some of whom I'm still friendly with. So my parents, my father would be a Westmeath man, so there's lots of Sheerins around Boyle, and that's normally the first question: am I related to such a one or this one? Usually, kind of anybody with an interest in football. Are you anything to Gay Sheerin? No, I'm not. Are you anything to Milo Sheerin? Yes, he's my brother. So everybody seemed to remember Milo from his time in Boyle. So next door then to me, kind of, O'Dowds would have been next door to me. Now, that'd be John O'Dowd and his wife Kay. They would be grandparents to the famous Chris now. So that's where Chris's grandparents, and where Chris's father grew up in the house next door to Sheerin's shop, which is now a shoe shop.
Oh, yes, okay, right.
Yeah. So, and then the other side of there it's Cosgrove's. It used to be, in my time, Dominic Cosgrove and his wife May had a pub and undertaking business there.
That's correct.
Now, as a child, I many times helped Dominic or May line coffins, which was an experience for a young lad, quite an experience. But I learned the trade of lining a coffin.
What did that entail?
No, it meant the coffin was selected by the family of the deceased, and then Dominic, May, either of them or both sometimes, would have the coffin on chairs in one of the rooms at the back of the pub, in their kitchen, I suppose. And there would be straw and there would be material, nice white material. So the straw was, you use with a stapler, you'd staple the nice white material around the sides of the coffin. And then that would be stuffed with, I think it was straw, and then neatly stapled afterwards. Oh, real nice job now. Very, very, I was well trained with that. It had to be nice.
And did they have a warehouse at the back? I always remember, the alleyway between Cosgrove's and the Hurlworks.
Yeah.
At the back, they had, as a kid, I used to always remember seeing coffins down there. So that was obviously related to
They had, at the back of that line of houses all along that side of Patrick Street, there's a lane at the back of it from we'd say Cosgrove's down to Bowles's, the back of Bowles's shop. It comes out at
That's right.
at the Shambles Yard there, near the river. That we call that the lane. That's what we used to refer to it as. That was the lane.
Was that called Eaton Lane?
Eaton Lane.
Is that what it was? Right.
Yeah, Eaton Lane.
Eaton Lane, yeah.
Commonly referred to as the lane in Patrick Street, okay? And behind that lane then, okay, you had the back of the business premises and private houses on one side, and then nearly every private house had a backyard, some with sheds, some without sheds. So Cosgrove's actually, their yard on the far side of the lane was their shed where they would have housed the coffins and where they housed the hearse as well. And in fact, the hearse was there in that premises or in that yard before it was recently done up. It was there up to a few years ago, a real old hearse. And I believe somebody bought it to restore it. So it'd be a fabulous job when it would be restored. You know, it would cost some bit of money now. But that was so. But the coffins were brought in as they were needed. They were brought in as they were needed, one by one, into the back of the living quarters in the house. And that's where I would have spent my time with them. And I think there may have been one or two others as well, helping out, you know. But that was an experience.
Fun time.
It was. Well, on and off. Do you know what I mean? I was very young, sure. I could have been 10 or 12 or 14, just helping out when they wanted a coffin, when they wanted help with that. Yeah, I was often asked to come in and
Someone's in.
And I enjoyed it, yeah. Then there, yes, down just down from there, of course, on the other side then, the far side of the lane, as you head towards, we'd say Ballymote, you had the Roscommon Herdworks. And my abiding memory of the Roscommon Herdworks as a youngster was the number of people who worked there inside. Numerous people who did the the lining, the print setting, the letters, inserting the letters to make up the words for the print. There's a name for that trade. I just forget it now. But there were numerous people there, and I was often in the Herdworks as a child, and I used to go around looking at these men at work. It was a very, very slow, tedious, but important job. And of course, had to be done.
Yeah.
Every letter, every word had to be, insofar as possible, correct. But that's the earliest, the late, or the end of a week, and the up to Monday, I suppose, or Tuesday of the following week. Those people were busy at that. And of course, in the front office, then you have a number of girls, women who were receiving the messages for advertising and all that. So the whole thing had to be put together out in the print works, we call it. And the Herald then was published on a Wednesday. It used to be released on a Wednesday, and my father and several other people, I suppose, used to deliver the Heralds around the county. My father had a taxi as well, and he used to, every Wednesday, I think, or maybe, I don't think it was Tuesday night, I think it was Wednesday, he would have a list of newsagents' shops to call to deliver whatever number of Heralds they would normally get each week.
Okay.
All right. But it was in 1965, I was still attending, in my final year, I'd say, in primary school, up in St. Joseph's Primary School, which was up opposite where the Nair factory is. There was an old schoolhouse there.
Just before where Apple Green is now.
Yes, at the back of Apple Green. Yes. Actually, it was just across the road from Nair. And I remember that, I think it was that year, going up to school one morning. I used to walk out and walk just past by the Herald, which was right beside my own house. And I remember one morning there was a lot of commotion and some smoke coming out from the Herald Works. And that was the morning that the Roscommon Herald Works was destroyed, was burned to the ground by a huge fire. And it had just been starting, and I didn't know what it was at the time. But I remember there was a bit of commotion, a bit of excitement. And when we went up to school then, opposite Nair, I remember we were looking out the windows because the smoke was gushing up, and the flames, the fire brigades were, I suppose a few different fire brigades were there as well, attending to the fire. and the place was destroyed. And after that, everything changed after that. They continued printing the Herald, not there obviously, but they got the use of another premises. I forget where it was. I think it was out on the road to the Rockadoon.
Right.
At some stage, the Roscommon Herald Works was there. I think that's where a temporary premises they started to use. So they're sort of key abiding memories of the early years in Boyle.
And of course, then you up the road from the Herald Works, you had Candon's.
Up from Candon's, of course, yeah, which was a huge business at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Candon's, again, had several people. And I can remember at that time, a lot of the goods that Candon's were buying in would have come in through Boyle railway station. And Candon's had a truck, but they also had one or two men who were on horseback with drawing a trailer or a cart to be the word, to carry the goods from the station up to the premises in Patrick Street.
That's right. I think James Candon in his episode spoke about that. I can't remember the gentleman's name that did the work, but
yeah. I forget the man's name too, even though I can still see his face. They went up a few times a day. I think there was more than one. But Candon's was a huge business. They had a big shop in front, and then at the side, the far side of that front was a big store, and they also had a store at the time across the road from it. That's kind of closed up now. But yeah, that was a big premises.
And did they have a payment system of some sort?
They had. Oh yes, there were a number of businesses in Boyle. Sloan's was another such business, had this payment system of, there were, whoever was working behind the counter, would say, serving the customers. When the customer went to pay, the salesperson would write out the docket for whatever was bought with the price on it. And then you paid the money to that person. And that person then, if they were tall enough, they could just reach up over their head to a little cup that screwed into a device that was attached to a line, and they'd pull the handle. And when they'd pulled the handle, it transported the cup with the money and containing the invoice that had been written. And the cup then was transported along the wire line over to the office, which was at the back of the shop. So the girl in the office put out her hand, released the cup, took out the money, saw what the goods came to, and saw what change needed to be sent back. And the change was sent back the same way. And that was the system. And that was the very same system that operated in Sloan's as well.
That's right. I did hear that.
Yeah. That was
ahead of their time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, and like maybe as a child, just you go into Candon's or go into these places just to see this method in operation. And it was, oh no, look at change times.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that was Candon's, and then of course, and then up towards Nair, Candon's, and then there was a shop then between Candon's, we'll say, and Nair's. It was a Hoard's, a little sweet shop. We used to call it there for sweets to or from school. It was a little shop.
Was that on the same side?
On the same side.
All right.
It to be up further up, about halfway up, to be before a few premises this side of the turn down for Stewart's Mill.
Okay.
There was a shop on the opposite side of the road, McLaughlin's shop.
Yeah, that was still there until recently.
Yeah, well,
well.
a little the town side of McLaughlin's, but on the opposite side of the road was this Horan shop. And then Nair, I worked in Nair actually. I remember when Nair started up, Patsy Quinn.
Patsy Quinn, yeah.
And Patsy was a great character. Patsy, I think my father would have asked him, would he ever had a summer job for me? I would have been, I suppose I was 16 or 17 at that stage. But yeah, Patsy, I worked a number of summers in Nair. It was all men, except in the office there may be one or two. But Pádraig O'Gara, the late Pádraig O'Gara, was foreman. I worked with another interesting character, a lovely man, Bernie Tighe. Bernie Ty, yeah, he's since deceased. But many a time I travelled. And not, I mean, I enjoyed the work in Nair because they had just started doing the aluminium windows. Before that, it was all steel cabinets. And most of those steel cabinets, you know, there'd be 4 or 5 lockers in it. It was a cabinet with lockers in it, like you'd find in a school for kids to put their books into. And each locker had its own key. So that was mostly what was made in Nair, kind of steel products. And but then they started the aluminium windows, and that's when I kind of that was the end I was at, with a few others. But I enjoyed that. I must say it was the whole procedure of doing the steel, the aluminium windows.
And was that your first job? No,
it was really.
Yeah.
No, I did work. With my brother-in-law, Joe Byrne, the late Joe Byrne, who'd be my sister Geraldine's husband. I spent several summers younger, I'd say, you know, when I was just starting maybe secondary school at that. I spent a number of summers with Joe going around on his wholesale fruit delivery. And so we used to call there to shops, counties, some in Sligo, and then Roscommon.
Yeah.
West Roscommon as well. But yeah, I enjoyed that.
A lot of people in town got their first job working in Nair's, from what I've heard.
Oh, yeah.
Donny Farrell told me recently that he got his first job up there.
Donny,
There's plenty others as well. But back in those days, you had Nair, you had Camden's, you had the Hurlworks. A load of people. Someone says back on a normal day, come 6 o'clock, you'd have maybe 100 plus people, workers, walking the street back in towards the town.
Yeah, you would have. Yeah,
and now, obviously, you don't have any of that.
No, it's such a change.
On.
Yeah. Well, the whole print with the Hurlworks anyway, the whole printing now. I mean, all the printing is done outside, a different county.
Yeah,
and everything now with email and all the technology, you know, everything can be put together. A lot of it by people working from home now.
Absolutely,
you know, employed by whoever is still behind the operation.
It was a lot harder work back in those days.
It was. Yeah, I mean, just the technology has changed everything. No more than the payment system used by phones and candles. Yeah. But in the school again, in that just going back earlier, then in the boys' national school, Paddy Kennedy was the principal at that time. He was principal at that time. He died a good few years ago, and Michael Carty, who died in more recent years, he was there as well. And then there was a Crowley teacher, and then Farry replaced a Farry man from Ballymote, I think, came then. But I can. We were upstairs in that school. It was a longish premises for a number of classrooms. But one day I remember there were a number of holes made by mice in the classroom. And one morning, I think it was Michael Carty. He kind of got the idea. He wanted to kind of put an end to these mice coming out. So he must have bought a few mouse traps. And he'd put down a mouse trap and a bit of cheese in it. And the next thing, a mouse had come out. And of course, we were like sitting down there just waiting, not a word out of us, which suited Michael Carty. I suppose it was a lovely, quiet, peaceful morning. But the mouse would come out and, of course, go for the cheese and bang. And then some of us would have to be sent out to discard the mouse somewhere. That went on for a few hours because I'd say we had at least 3 traps every time, and they were all catching mice that morning. It was, we enjoyed the morning. It was lovely.
Past a few hours.
Now, we might have got a lot of homework, but it was grand. It's just one of those memories I have of that time.
Of course, yeah. And so then moving maybe on from Patrick Street, you have plenty other, obviously, recollections and stories from different streets. And as you were telling me beforehand, you remember based on the street rather than individual memories. Shout away. Whichever.
I tell you, yes. Well, I remember we'd say moving down towards Main Street, but remember where we, as a youngster, as a teenager, spend a lot of time socialising was in Gaffney's chip shop, down near where Ryan's chemist shop used to be. We have spent a lot of time there, you know, when we were on holidays of school and that, boys and girls and that. lots of chips or ice cream or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, Ryan's chemist shop there. I remember, just there before you come to Gaffney's, Flaherty's. Now, Margaret Mary Flaherty, she has a hairdressing business just there. And her parents had a pub and a shop, Flaherty's shop. I can remember, and Patsy, her brother, Patsy Flaherty, they're all still alive. But their parents had a big business. And I remember it was there that I, for the first time, put my eyes on a television. I remember at the far end of the bar, there was a little screen, and I could not understand how there was a man inside this box who looked a normal size and was speaking out to us. I could not understand that. How in the name of God is this happening? So that was the early 1960s, I suppose. I'd have been, 8 or 9, 10 maybe.
Yeah, amazing though, isn't it, these days to think.
That was in Flaherty's shop, yeah. That's when I saw my first television.
And you can still remember that?
Oh, I can still remember the puzzlement of trying to make out how in the name of God did that guy get into that box and be that he could talk out to us. How was it done? Oh, it was total fascination, yeah. It was really.
It made that payment system in Camden's and Sloan's, fall backward.
It did. Yeah. But in Ryan's then, the chemist shop, yeah, that was a fine chemist shop, one of the many chemist shops in Boyle at the time as well. I know there are a lot more now. But the first corpse I ever saw was in Ryan's. And that was the old man. I knew Paddy Ryan and his, I think, wife and sisters were there. But it was Paddy's father. When he died, his remains obviously were laid out upstairs, and my father or mother or whatever must be going down and asked me would I come down or whatever. And I went down. But as a child, I can remember seeing the corpse laid out. I think my father said to me, he was there and he just said, do you want to feel the cold of death or something? And I did. And it was some sensation now. As a child, it was the first dead person I ever put my hand on. And the coldness of it.
And would this have been before or after your kind of help line the coffins in Cosgroves?
This would have been possibly before or just around the same time. Okay. Now, I had never touched a corpse any time, when I was doing the coffins.
Yeah, you were just preparing.
I knew the coffin all right, but the actual feeling, touching the corpse, that was it. That man, I forget his first name. I think I remember mentioning that to maybe Paddy or maybe one of Paddy's sons afterwards, and they were fascinated, that to hear from somebody that the first corpse that this young fella ever touched was their grandfather or grandfather, Then, moving away from that then, up Green Street. Oh, we had some fun in Green Street as kids. Now, this would be, I suppose, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah. That time, of course, the winters, there was lots and lots of snow. When snow fell, it really fell. And we used to walk up, eventually get to the top of the crescent. And we'd
Green Street
the Green Street, Green Street. And up there, up at the top of it now, there was such a great fall down, and we used to borrow drink trays from Tom Wynn's pub at the bottom of the crest. So fair play, Tom would give us trays, surely. Maybe not all the time, you couldn't blame him, but when he did, we'd walk up to the top of the crescent, to the top of the green, and put our backsides on this little tray, a little circular tray, and slide the whole way down. And by God, it was great. We really had great crack.
That's a steep hill as well.
Oh yeah, and at that stage, the snow was well compounded, and it was really ice, and it was really slippy. Oh, you come flying down.
Anyone never got injured?
No. I can often remember, maybe at times you'd be coming down, and you'd be hoping that you wouldn't go across and in through or hit Bowles' window. But that was
There would have been
something
no cars either back then.
There were very few cars. No, I mean the junction there outside Bowles, the junction there at that crossroads, there would be very few cars.
There would have been a few on watch anyway to make sure there was no cars.
Yeah, so that was but that was some fun. And later on, actually, then during the summer, obviously when there was no snow, we used to. I remember several of us used to build little go-karts, timber and wheels, maybe the wheels of an old pram or something, and we'd have a little steering mechanism with a piece of rope, and you sat on the one person on each trolley, and come down that hill as well. Now that was a bit more dangerous, and that was a time when you could actually nearly go hitting Bowles' window, but it never happened, not that I can remember. But yeah, they were good recollections. And one other great recollection from Green Street was, as kids as well, I remember there was a man making pots and pans. I now know him, well, in recent years, to be John Riley, the famous singer-songwriter.
Yes.
The man who wrote the song recorded by Christy Moore, The Well Below the Valley.
That's right. There's a plaque outside the moving stairs.
There is, I saw it. Would I remember John Riley?
Really?
Yeah, I sure do. And I was only a very young lad.
Tell us a bit about him.
John Riley would be sitting down on the footpath, just up there, up at the top of Green Street. Not at the very top, but somewhere on the right-hand side. I think he lived in one of the tourist houses up there, I think, for a while anyway. And he used to have his tools and his sheets of tin. And to watch him and the skill he had to cut the tin and shape it with his little hammers and tools to make a beautiful saucepan or kettle. And rivets as well were used for some part of it. But he was brilliant. And I never knew him anything about his songwriting or singing or anything.
Back then, obviously
Back
not.
then.
Yeah.
It was only years later, I was at a Christy Moore concert, and he mentioned about being at the All-Ireland Fleadh, it must have been 1960, and meeting, he introduced the audience to the song by talking about John Riley, who wrote the song. And I said, God almighty, that's the John Riley. Because I knew his name was John Riley. And that was him. And I've seen the photographs ever since. And that was the man.
And he had captured these kind of forgotten stories and songs.
He had learned, John Riley, of course, was from a travelling community.
Yes. And
John had learned these songs, maybe tunes, whatever, from his people before him. And he had, lucky enough, he had memorised them or whatever. And lucky enough,
preserved them
and passed on whatever songs, the likes of the one he passed on to Christy Moore, who certainly very much appreciated, and who Christy Moore to this day always mentions the writer of that song every time he plays it.
Yeah.
Even recently, I heard him talk about that song, and I heard him talk about due tribute to John Riley.
Mm.
So that was Green Street,
yeah. Plenty of memories up there.
Oh yeah.
So maybe moving on then towards Main Street.
Main Street, yeah. Well, Main Street, I remember. Yeah, Main Street, Tom Wynn's pub at the corner there with Green Street and Main Street. Yeah, Tom was the man who used to give us the trays for the sliding, and of course with the sliding as well. I'd go home after a few hours of this crack, and of course the first thing, my mother or father, what in the name of God did you do to the backside of your trousers? It's all worn, and it was. That was just the friction coming down on the slide. But anyway, we'd get over that. So into Main Street then, and I remember Fred Perry opening the first supermarket.
That's correct.
The first supermarket, I remember
in the west of Ireland, wasn't it, as well?
It was one of the first supermarkets. It was certainly the first in Boyle. And I remember that well. And this idea of people going round with a trolley that was supplied to them and being able to walk round the whole shop and have access to select whatever products they wanted off the shelves. Like up to that, everything was a counter and somebody behind the counter, and they'd get your list for you. But this was the first thing of the customer in full control. And, you know, being able to choose themselves what they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted, how much they wanted.
Freedom to go around.
The freedom to go around and the freedom to go around and just look, like, you know, and be able to maybe touch the products or see, you know, read about them or whatever else. Whereas before that, you could be asking somebody behind the counter, well, I'd like to, you know, show me this or show me that. They were able to do that.
It'd be interesting to see hear if anyone is listening that would be able to tell, was it the first? I know it was the first in Boyle, obviously, but I do think it was the first in maybe the west of Ireland or something.
It could have been. It could have been. It could have been.
It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know. But that was the whole spectacle of seeing how this operation, how customers now did their shopping. That was a whole new ball game. And I remember at that time as well, shortly after that, it must have been Jacobs or Boyle's or biscuit manufacturers, whichever of those companies brought out fig rolls. And there was a big campaign then, how do Jacobs get the fig into the fig rolls? And they came up with this thing of sending this guy around the country to be called Jim Fig. And Jim Fig had the secret. And Jim went round different towns around Ireland on behalf of the company, the biscuit manufacturers. It was a real marketing thing. And he had a big tash and a bright long coat. And he wore a hat. And they'd have an advertising campaign that Jim Fig is in, let's say, in the Roscommon area today. If you spot him and talk to him, you'll get a voucher or get some money off him. And we knew he was coming to Roscommon. There was a rumour then going around, he's supposed to be coming to Boyle. And he did come to Boyle because I saw him. But I didn't get a chance, I didn't get near him to ask him anything. But there was some handout from him if you got to talk to him.
And there'd be a big commotion around that.
Oh, a big commotion, oh yeah. And then the excitement then was, God, who met Jim Fig today? Who met him in Boyle? And you'd hear, and what they got, and the excitement, a big buzz.
That just reminds me of another topic, Ned Kelly. Who was the town crier.
Yeah, no,
you would have remembered him.
I remember Ned Kelly, surely. Ned Kelly was the town crier, a small, stoutish man, and he'd be dressed in a black, long-tailed, what would you call it? Like what you'd have at years ago at a dinner dance or a dress dance. A dress dance. Tailcoat, tail jacket.
Yeah.
And a white shirt and maybe a little waistcoat. And a big bell in his hand. And he'd go round making an announcement about whatever was about to happen in the town in regard to, it could be the circus, it could be Duffy's Circus coming to town, it could be Murray's Amusements coming to town, it could be something going on in some business in town. And it always was, he walked around all the streets, Main Street, Patrick Street, Bridge Street, up the Crescent, everything, and hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Duffy's Circus coming to town this evening. Admission, whatever, 2 shillings, all welcome. And this kept going on. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
And the town crier was so that people that maybe couldn't read, that were not able to read, were able to get the news.
Able to get the news, yeah. It would have been to get the news. Because I suppose printing and all that mightn't have been that easy at the time, you know. Yeah. No, it was a great way to get the news, to get the story out of what was happening. And it was great. And he'd ring the bell every so often. When he wouldn't be talking, he'd be ringing the bell.
And would he be primarily around the centre of town, or did he go uptown?
He went all over the town, all over the town itself, like over to the end of Main Street, up to the end of Patrick Street, up to the Crescent, up Elphin Street, I suppose, up to the, around the shopping area of the town. I think that's as far as it'd have gone, do you know? But Ned Kelly, he had glasses as well, and a smallish man.
He was He was a great friend of the Camdens too.
He would have been, actually.
Yeah, he was.
He might have lived with them.
He did.
They were very good to him.
Yeah, they were very good to him.
They were very good to him. I think James was there, and he had a brother, Michael. I think Michael, they would all have been close to Ned. Michael, I remember Michael. Michael was the accountant in James would have been running the kind of the dealing with customers or dealing with whatever shops or whatever. Michael was doing he was inside more. He was farming as well. And he was doing, Michael Candon used to do the books. And he used to cycle up to work, as did James indeed. Michael would have an old bike. He lived a kind of a very simple, quiet lifestyle. James used to have, I suppose, more of an upmarket bike, all right, I'd say, yeah. So that was.
So then was when the old Garda station and all.
The old Garda station, yeah, over now where the present Garda station is, that's a whole new building, and I say they've done more recent work on it in the last 12 months of that.
They have.
But before that place was built, the old barracks was a real old, if you think of the real old, and it would have been an old RIC station, obviously. And it was built, and there were a few other Garda houses where whoever was stationed in Boyle the families would have been given these state-owned houses. They were all part of big houses, and they would have been perpendicular to the existing roadway. In other words, the front barracks used to be near the road, and then the other houses went down the back of the old Garda station. You know, you had to walk in by the barracks to get the next house, walk down by that to get to the next house. That's what I mean. And then that was beside where the old military barracks, which is now King House.
King House, that's right. Yeah.
But I remember outside the barracks. Yeah, you see, in the 60s, CIE or whoever, maybe Board Fáilte, I'm not sure. I'd say it would be pre-Board Fáilte. But CIE had these who ran the buses and trains all over the country at the time. They used to come up with this marketing thing of a mystery tour. Now, a mystery tour to Boyle, there were mystery tours nearly every year. During the summer, a train would head off from Dublin, and the people, it would have been advertised as a mystery tour probably to the west of Ireland. So people from Dublin, families or whatever else, who wanted to come down to hop on a train and go, they didn't know where they were going. They just knew it was, you hop on a train and you go wherever you're brought. And this was the day out, and you paid so much and you were brought back that evening. But a few of the mystery tours that came to Boyle that time, there were some great people. Of course, the majority of people who came on the trains were fine. But on a few occasions, there was a gang of just troublemakers who came down, and some of them were armed with the weapons, maybe chains or whatever else. They came down just to cause trouble, to drink, I suppose. And of course, the drink then didn't help some of them, but they'd arrive, and then I remember they were outside the Garda station in Boyle, the old Garda station, out on the main road. And they were throwing things, maybe bottles or throwing something at the guards. The guards were outside with weapons, trying to calm them down, trying to stop them. But I remember there was a kind of a battle between the guards. They had no option but to try and, at that time, they could do that. But they tackled them, and all they were trying to do was try and stop them from doing more damage. They were breaking windows, actually, in the town. I'd say they were drinking in pubs, and there was a few cases of windows being broken. Maybe they were being told to get out or not to behave, or to, that they were getting no more drink. And that's when they started causing real trouble. And that's when the guards had to come the heavy on them.
And I'd say that's when the mystery tour stopped.
The mystery tours did stop. And I'd say that would have been partly because the business people at Boyle didn't want them. Naturally, they didn't want the troublemakers. And remember, the guards then would be more or less following these people until the train was due to go back at 7 o'clock in the evening, or maybe 7:30. And then they'd get them on board and say, bye-bye, and good luck to you. I hope you never come back. That would have been the view of the guards, naturally, and the business people.
Because the premise of it was great. I think it was Tony Conboy talked about this in his episode. I'm not sure. He didn't talk about the standoff, but bringing the tourism down to Boyle for the day.
Yeah.
But I suppose then it was just kind of a drinking session turned into. Not for everyone, of course.
No, not at all. No, like everything, the vast majority of people who went on those tours were fine, and they went with the best of intentions. But these guys, young fellas, I spoiled it for everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the other people on the trains were just disgusted with them. Because it spoiled their days, especially with the young kids with them. It was horrible. But those tours did end. But there were several years where the tours went on. And that was in the 60s. Earlier, mid-60s, I'm not sure. But it was definitely then. So that was the Garda station. And then beside the Garda station, just there, you had the tennis club.
That's right.
No, that was, and that's still there. And I see they've two lovely green courts.
All weather, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're getting floodlights as well.
I played a lot of tennis there when I was, I suppose, 13, 14, 15, 16. And so did many more with great friends that the same age, lots of them. And boys and girls. And during the summer there, during the days, again, this would be, I suppose, before I would have gone working in Nair. Yeah, I would have been 12, 13, 14, certainly. We used to play tennis, go down there in the mornings, and I'd be there the whole day. But we had great games. And it was a great sport. I loved it.
Yeah.
And lots of people. And there was a pavilion there beside it as well.
It's still there, yeah.
Still, is it?
It is.
We used to have what we called hops then, discos.
That's correct, yeah. There used to be discos.
A hop, we call it, yeah.
The hop.
The hop. And of course, that was it, yeah. And there'd be some bit of music. Sometimes it'd be a DJ that'd be employed. Somebody would come with their deck and play the CDs or whatever else. And, oh yeah.
Great innocent times.
Great innocent times, yeah. Can a man might be around then to keep an eye that everything was in order, that there was no young ones getting too close to one another or something like that, you know.
Because it was at the back of the Catholic club.
This was the Catholic, what is now the Family Life Centre was the Catholic club. And in fact, my father used to tell me, he used to, when he came to Boyle first, he used to play billiards there, as it, you know, lots of whatever other friends of that. But I did play billiards in it a few times, not too often though. But there were two fine billiard tables inside.
Then it was snooker in my day.
Or snooker.
I think it was snooker.
I'm not sure. It's the big tables anyway.
It was snooker, I think it was. Yeah.
Was that it?
It was snooker. Well, unless there was, which billiards is a different game, but snooker was what it was there for me when I was growing up in the 80s.
Right, yeah.
The early 90s.
Well, were they the big tables?
Big tables.
Yeah. Maybe snooker is for the smaller tables, is it? What they play now?
Pool is the smaller tables.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, whatever
I think it was snooker.
The big tables anyway.
Yeah.
I often played on them, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a McDermott man was the caretaker. His brother Paddy worked in the post office. And this...
Oh, Paddy McDermott, was it?
Well, Paddy worked at the post office, I think.
And he lived out the Carrick Road, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
But his brother was caretaker in the what we call the Catholic Club then. I forget, he lived in Marion Road. The caretaker did. I forget. Yeah. That was that, and then the Boyle Abbey, of course. Then just further down, many a time. Now there were very few visitors to the Abbey that time, but as kids we used to go into it, and we used to go up the tower, up the steps, into the high part of it. There, it's one corner nearest the main road, I'd say, nearest the roundabout. That corner, and we used to be able to walk up there. It was a kind of a round steps, I think. And we used to be standing up at the wall at the very top of it, like a danger, if anyone. But we used to, and of course, had no fear of it that time.
It was derelict back then as well.
Oh, it was, yeah. It was many years later. The money was spent on it, I suppose, by whoever, Board of Works or whatever, to attract tourists, you know.
Yeah, the OPW have it now.
The OPW, yeah. The football field, of course.
Did you play? You played Gaelic?
I played a bit of. I was a member of. I played with Boyle GA Club for a number of years, so I wasn't much good at the football or that. But I did play underage. The first game I ever played with the club, I'd say, would have been probably under 12, because there was no under 8s, under 10s that time, I think. I played hurling. And the man in charge was a Tipperary man, Bob Carr. I think it was Bob Carr.
So there was hurling back in Boyle in those days.
There was hurling back in Boyle in the early 60s and for years afterwards. I think Bob Carr, I think that was his name, yeah. And he was I think a Tipperary man. He was from a hurling county anyway. And Oh, he was great. Yeah, I remember. I think that evening, Bob and maybe somebody else. There might be 2 or 3 cars, and there could be 20 young lads stuffed into the 3 cars and off down to Hall or wherever for a game of hurling.
The game was on, yeah.
And these jerseys, and some jerseys, I remember maybe having a jersey on one time, which was just 3 times too big for me. But anyway, I played a bit of football with Boyle after that, and of course, that time John McGowan and Sean Young as well were very much involved with the teams that time. Particularly John with the young lads, like. Sean Young came later. But John McGowan, we used to spend lots of time with John. John was a detective in town, and he was staying in accommodation, B&B up in Dwyer's, opposite Rose Garage, the top of the Crescent, opposite Trojan.
Yes.
Trojan. That's where my own father stayed, the same bed and breakfast. When he came to Boyle first in the late 20s. But John used to be there, and because he was staying in digs or whatever, I suppose he had, when he wasn't on duty, he'd go down to the Crescent and he'd park up his Volkswagen. And a few of us then, we were, I suppose, teenagers at the time, would hop into the car and we'd chat the way there, and sure, he could bring us off anywhere, or good crack.
Yeah. Is that John now that Eileen was married?
Eileen, yes, Eileen's late husband. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
I can't remember John myself.
Yeah. John is a good few years dead now. He was a very nice man.
Yeah.
And he was very, very good to us young fellas now. He was very good, and devoted a lot of his time to us as well, for football and just be nice to us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, the centre of the town, the Royal Hotel.
The Royal Hotel, yeah. Well, I'm delighted to see the Royal Hotel looking kind of good now again, because it was such an eyesore there for a long time. Pity that it's not going to be a hotel, but it's great to see. At least the way it is now, it's a lot better.
Oh, it is.
And I think it's going to be a lovely facelift for the centre of town along the river there. And I think if they put the right, maybe little businesses into that place, into Rioga,
which is Irish for
young hotel.
Royal, I think.
Yeah, Ria's Royal and Oga is young. So Rioga, what I gather, or this is what somebody said to me, and it makes sense. It's kind of the new, or the baby Royal, or the young Royal. In other words, it's the new version of the old Royal, so it's the young Royal.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Rioga, yeah. Oga's young and Ria's king, yeah, surely, yeah.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
So it's just, it's a nice name for it. I think that
keeps the bit of history there.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. But it's lovely, and I see, I haven't been actually into it yet, but there seems to be a lovely garden area at the back.
It's fabulous.
With
really
seats, and I must actually have a look at that
really
next time I'm down there.
Yeah, and they have the plans then to put in the library, the new library, starting in 2025.
Yeah. And the council have done a lovely job with the centre of town there, along the bridge, along at the
side of the
side, near that nice restaurant. Nice coffee shop restaurant,
of course that,
beside the river.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, yes, that's nice.
It used to be the Stonehouse.
Yes, and actually before that, I remember that as a barber shop.
Morris. When
I was a child, that's where I used to get my haircut. There were 2 brothers, to be Morris's, Anne Morris, Tony Conboy's wife's, to be her father and her uncle.
Yes, it was Jack Morris.
Jack Morris, and there were 2 brothers. Who and both of them worked in it at the, now there were 2 brothers, I think, in the other barber shop as well, near the Methodist church there opposite Brogan's. There's an old little church building there opposite, just across the road from Brogan's chemist shop.
Yeah, there's the Methodist church.
Church, and beside that there was maybe there still is, there was a barber shop there.
Okay, well there's a house to the left of the church, so maybe
Burns. There were Burns, yeah. 2 brothers, I think, as well. That was another barber shop there.
Okay.
So
do you remember in the Stonehouse as well, there used to be a lady, I can't remember her name, she was blind, she used to live in there for a long time. I remember when I was a kid now, Mum used to tell me that there was an old blind woman that used to live in that Stonehouse. This would have been after.
Is that right? Maybe now I don't remember.
Okay.
This is where the barber shop was.
You were probably gone though at that
Yeah,
stage.
maybe.
The late 70s.
Yeah, maybe. I remember, like, we'd say certainly in the 60s, I used to go down in this, when I was very young, the early 60s, I used to go and get my haircut there. Yeah.
And along the river then, was there any tragedies in your day? Or
Actually, there was a tragedy, yes. I remember I was very young. I was only coming, at that time, going to primary school. At that time, the girls always went to the convent from the word go, for the time they went at 4-year-olds, right? Whereas the boys would go to the convent for junior infants and senior infants. And after that, then, when you were going into first class and up to sixth class, you went to St. Joseph's Boys' School up opposite Nair, the Nair factory. And I remember it would have been, I think, coming home from the convent. So I would have been very young. Sure, I'd only been 5 or 6. Or maybe it was a bit later. But anyway, there was a little boy, and I don't know what age he was, but he was after being drowned. We were walking home from school, and I think it was from the convent, but I'm not sure. And we walked down, again, the lane at the back of the shops, the business premise on Main Street, down by the side of the river, down by the side of McNamara's house, down by the side of King House.
that used to be called Lover's Lane, I think.
Was that it? Lover's Lane?
I think.
Yeah,
that was the old historic name.
Yeah. So I came down there, and I remember there was a lot of commotion down at the little wall, just that where you look down, you look over the wall and you're looking at the river below you. There was a young lad, Carol. He was from up Mockmoyne, and I forget his first name. I remember an older brother, Liam Carroll, who died a number of years ago. Liam was a brother of this lad, and I forget the young lad's name. But he was very young, and he had fallen into the river there, and he was drowned. His body was got off further down the river that same day. I remember that being, for me as such a young fella, and knowing the little lad who had drowned, and trying to come to terms with that. I wouldn't have probably fully understood death or, drowning, but I remember that having quite an effect on me in that the whole mystery of it, and I suppose eventually realising the sadness of what had happened. I remember that. That's the only tragedy, because I used to, and a number of us who used to do a little bit of fishing as young fellas, maybe 10, 12, and we used to actually do our fishing from, at the bridge in Boyle, we used to go down on a little ledge, let me see. It would be the ledge at the river beside the bridge, closest to the corner of where there was Scanlon's had a pub. A pub.
Scanlon's pub.
Was there a Chinese restaurant or something in it?
Still is above it, yeah.
Well, the corner of the bridge, there's a ledge down, and we used to stand there. There was a way of climbing down. And we used to stand there, and many had often caught perch, I think, or whatever. So, again, always being careful, trying to be careful that, thank God nothing ever happened there, tragically. But yeah, that was another spot for the fishing and that,
And the shambles would have been a focal point back in
the shambles days. Yeah, at that time, I'm just at the shambles. You have, at the moment, you have Bowles' premises. The side, one side of Bowles' shop is close to, we'll say, that area where you can sit and have your coffee beside that restaurant. Yeah. In the corner at the back, just towards Eaton Lane, aside of Bowles', there was a big egg shop, Coleman's Egg Shop. Now I think it was Brothers. I remember being in it, and the place, you'd walk in the store, the entrance was from just out there, that area at the side. It's the same area where you go into the Shambles Yard. And the place would be full of trays of eggs. And that time when they must have bought in the eggs, but maybe they were buying them from local farmers or whatever but every egg had to be inspected. And they had a box with a big bulb in it. And each egg was held up to the light that was in the box, and it showed you whether the egg was to be eaten or not, whether it was a fresh egg, or maybe it showed, I don't know what, but every egg had to be tested. And then the eggs were packed then on the basis of having passed that test. Yeah.
And I heard as well that any eggs that were, the shells were cracked or they weren't proper, went through the inspection, they were either given away free or at a reduced cost.
Yeah.
You'd have people going in getting the...
you would, the cheapies, getting the bargain. Yeah,
exactly.
But, and then into the shambles yard itself. The shambles yard, my memories of the shambles yard, I know what the chainsaw people, what do you call them?
East Brothers?
East Brothers started out there. They had their business was started inside the shambles yard. But I remember before that, there was a big shed at the back of the shambles yard. And there was big bags of wool, huge bags, canvas bags, into which the wool was. Farmers would bring they'd be after sharing the sheep. They'd bring the wool. Whoever was it, Bowles that owned the shambles that time?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, the wool was Bowles bought the wool, and the wool was packed into huge sacks that were suspended by 4 ropes coming from the roof. Right, and as kids we were able to. Now, there was more than one bag to contain the wool. There could have been 3 or 4 of them. And there were a number of ropes then suspended from the roof of the shed. And as kids, we used to get up on some of the big bags of wool, catch onto a rope and swing across to another bag and into another bag or something. Sure, it was great crack altogether. But that was another activity. Spent many a time swinging on the ropes. And you get a big swing altogether and land into the bag of wool. Sure, it was great crack.
Yeah. So music festivals in your day, would there have been many music festivals?
I remember, well, I tell you, I don't remember. I remember Fair Days in Boyle. Fair Days in Boyle was huge. Now, I was very young at that time. The late 50s and early 60s and the 60s, the Fair Day was in Boyle. I don't know how often. There were a few of them every year, right? They would bring huge crowds. And you'd hear, like, there'd be commotion because I was living in the town. You'd hear the farmers coming in from the Ballymote, Gurchin side, walking down by our premises, early hours of the morning, bringing their cattle up to the Crescent or up Green Street, the top of Green Street. That's where the Fair Green was. That's where the cattle were bought and sold. Horses used to be brought up to, I think, up the Crescent, outside Dodds and that area. But business premises used to have to put up a protective hoarding in front of their shop windows to stop the cattle going touching them or breaking them or doing worse, pulling on them. So that was the thing there with sorry, you mentioned there
the music festival.
Oh yeah, the music. No, well, for the Flas. Of course, the Flas, 1960 and 66. Now, in 1960, I was only 7, so... but I remember those Flas, the band parades. Oh, God almighty. Numerous bands. Pipe bands, and all sorts of bands playing away. That was huge. A big parade of the bands and different performers. But I remember, yes, that was with those bands.
That was the Flas were 60 and 66, I think.
60 and 66. Now, I do remember, actually, it must have been 1960 because I was so young. I remember the first experience of being really frightened, of being caught in a crowd. I must have walked from home, and I remember around, let me see, at the bottom of the Crescent, near Daly's had a bar, Daly's pub, and they're off licence. Well, this would be obviously before off licence, but around Daly's pub at the bottom of the Crescent, there was a huge crowd, a massive crowd from there the whole way up the Crescent. And I remember I must have been in that crowd or starting to walk up the Crescent. And I just got frightened because I was squeezed in with such a huge adults, surrounded by adults. And I remember being really frightened because I thought I'd never get out of it. I thought I was going to die.
Claustrophobic.
Yes, whatever it was. Because I couldn't see where I was going. And I was too small for even these people to notice that there was a young fella under their feet, maybe, or at their feet. You know what I mean? There was such a buzz, such a crowd. Yeah, I remember that all right. Okay. Yeah. Look at it was great memories.
Yeah.
Great memories, yeah.
Yeah, there was no other, I don't think, no, the arts festival wouldn't have been around.
No, just when you mentioned about bands, I remember, but I was at some of them, but this would have been in the 80s, I think. There were festivals in Boyle, and the performers used to perform there near the shambles, near the entrance to the shambles yard. I remember Brendan O Dowd now singing.
Well, that was 1985.
Yeah, well, those years now. That's
yeah.
I remember, and I've watched videos on YouTube.
That would have been from Brian Scanlon. He took all the footage back then.
Oh,
and that went up on YouTube. So that was the Arts Festival of 1985.
Oh, the Arts Festival.
And they were that's brilliant footage.
Yeah.
So
no, Oh, that's what that was part of the Arts Festival.
That was part of the Arts Festival.
Well, I was gone from Boyle, but I remember going down to Boyle from Tulsk. It must have been to one of those festivals, and I spent hours. I remember really enjoying the music, different performers coming on. They were all performing outside at the side of Bulls.
That's right, yeah. That's where they were.
Is that where it always happened?
Well, that's where the footage that I saw of the 1985, I can't remember myself, but the footage, there's great footage there that Brian Scanlon had recorded from back in the day.
All right, okay.
So that's up there on YouTube.
Yeah.
A lot of people have seen that because there's so many people in that. Their parents, them as kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I look at any of that footage now, it's amazing. Yeah, so many faces you can remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know.
So what I think we'll do, Noel, is because you have a lot of these stories. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a part 2 in a couple of months.
Fine.
So I think we'll wrap it up there because there's a lot more I know you have to cover. Rather than making this one long episode, I'd like to get 2 parts to it, and we'll come back and we'll pick up where we left off in part 2.
I look forward to that because I know there's a lot of when I was in preparation for this interview, just jotting down a few things and I know it a lot, and I know
there's a lot because I've seen your notepad here. There's a lot more we have to get to, and I think it'd be great for a part 2.
That'd be great, yeah,
absolutely. But
no, thanks and thanks again. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you, because I know you found the podcast and you messaged and said, look, you'd love to have some stories, and I think it's great because to have someone find us and then reach out and offer to come on is brilliant, because it's it'd be hard to contact people that I personally wouldn't know myself. It's our first time to meet, but there's a lot more we have to get through for part 2.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
and I look forward to that, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Noel. Thank you very much.
Thanks.